You're listening to Synergy to Synastry, the podcast where two corporate girlies called to follow their intuition take you on a journey of self-exploration through metaphysical modalities.
I'm Christine, intuitive coach and clairvoyant.
And I'm Renee, psychic intuitive and astrologer.
We're excited that you're here and honored to be your spiritual guides. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen. It helps listeners find our show, plus it automatically enters you into our raffles to win a free psychic reading.
Now, let's get into the episode. Have you ever been to one of those hypnotist shows before?
No, and it's so funny because I was always so scared of those hypnotist shows because they would make people do stupid things.
Yeah, they used to have those at my college, so I went to a few of them because it would be part of the opening week. One of the years, it was one of my roommates, she got hypnotized, so she went up on the stage, and people kept coming up to her afterwards because they're like, oh my gosh, you were so funny. There were always people, and the guy would find them. There'd be people that were faking. And they would just be trying to be funny and be on stage, and he would send them off and get rid of them. We talked briefly about hypnosis in a listener question in season 1. And as we are so interested in this topic, we wanted to have someone who actually can speak to this, practices it, and is a legitimate practitioner. So more on the health and wellness side rather than doing tricks on stage, come on the podcast, break it down for us. And we actually did have sessions with her. So you'll be able to hear our debriefs and analysis on that on her podcast, which we'll share the details for later. But we wanted to welcome to the podcast
Chris. Does anybody ever call you Chris, or it's just Christian?
Some people call me Chris, but I love that intro. Right now. I've never had anybody call me that way. And Christian Joy has been a new development. I've been assigning myself that name through my work because it brings a different energy to it. I'll still answer to Chris. There's too many Chris's in the world, though. I'll answer to Christian. But people get confused with that one, too. They usually want to change it to Christine or Christina when they see me. So,
Well, we already have one of those, so it would be me that would be the one confusing, and I won't, I promise.
Yeah. You should join my circle. I have a best friend, Kristen. Her sister-in-law is Christina. My godson is CJ, Chris. My uncle is Chris. God. My cousin's husband is Chris. So any function, somebody says Chris, 8 people turn around.
Yeah. I just need to complete the circle.
Now, if you hear someone singing Chris, you know it's directed at you.
Oh, yes. I'm excited. It's like a bird call.
Okay, before we go any further, Renee, can you give us the rundown of Christian's beautiful bio?
Christian Joy is a former nurse who dove headfirst into the metaphysical world during the Great Awakening of 2020. Her path of self-discovery led her to becoming an intuitive life coach, quantum hypnotist, psychedelic breathworker, and a freshly minted Reiki Master. This self-proclaimed Sagittarian clown is passionate about helping others step into their highest frequency. She blends the mystical with the practical, guiding people towards collective oneness through self-awareness and authenticity. Christian is also the host of the CJoy and Expand Podcast, where she shares experiential wisdom to inspire flow, alignment, and lasting change from the inside out.
Thank you for calling it a beautiful bio, because when you guys asked me to submit it, I was like, oh, I think I'm going to change my intro to that now. I got to a point where in my podcast, because you guys know I'm really raw with it. When I first created my podcast, I was putting it in together really fast, Manny Jen style, and was because we do things fast. And then I ended up hating it. And I ran with it for a while, and I was like, this is why we should go slow.
Why don't we get to our first question?
Yes, please.
How exactly did you get from nursing and just the arc of your life into life coaching and quantum hypnosis?
I was an ICU nurse for 10 years, and during the 2020, 2021 area of the pandemic, I started travel nursing. I did COVID assignments, and then my last assignment, which ended in April of 2021, I went through a huge breakup. It's always breakups, right? I had two like really bad breakups before this, and then that was like the kicker, the last one right before it, because he was like everything I thought I wanted, but he didn't reciprocate, so that was very heartbreaking. And then I went on this assignment in Reno, and I spent my weekends snowboarding, and I started listening to podcasts. It's like the first time I ever listened to podcasts. And I found Mark Groves. He's big in the relationship sphere. I had a moment at work on this assignment. I was like so absolutely bored. I didn't have the challenges that I needed to keep me on board. And then I literally sat down and on the one break I had and took out a piece of paper and wrote down a whole list of this is how I'm going to get out of nursing. Not that that list came to fruition, but it was the start. And I found Sahara Rose, Discover Your Dharma, I believe. And then I did listen to one of her quantum hypnosis things. And that was like the first time I heard about quantum hypnosis. And it kind of like left my brain for a little bit. And then I did find my life coach teacher there. It was like probably 2023. I would barter sessions with a bunch of Akashic readers because I was a part of a community. I know one of my guides is a trickster guide, but one of them was like, "You should do hypnosis," and I was like, "What? Where did that come from?" I bought a hypnotherapy program and a quantum hypnosis program, and because of the way the hypnotherapy program was fashioned, it was very college. So I went the quantum hypnosis route because it was easy for me to learn.
Even though it was slow, you sort of found your path by just following the next step that was laid out in front of you. Now, we know how you got to where you are. Can you define what a life coach, quantum hypnotist is in your words?
Life coaching is, for me, and how I use it in my work, is how do I put all this spiritual knowledge into the practical world? I very much guide my clients into what it is that they want out of this life. They've been anxious and fearful for a very long time, trying to figure out what it is that their soul wants to like tap into instead. They say that you can't coach somebody into something you haven't been through yourself. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm letting them come to their own answers, which is like an intuitive life skill, with hopes once they leave a relationship with me that they can be guided by their own answers moving forward.
Any of these modalities, what you're really doing is stripping away everything that society has told a person that they need in order to be happy and helping them listen to their own intuition and hear their soul say, I know this is what society says, but let me tell you what we actually need. And then you help guide people towards that.
Yeah, and I'm very much rebel energy. If you guys ever taken that Four Tendencies test, I'll help people like step out of the box with their way of being and their thinking. I came across a really great quote recently, and it's like the universe wants to be experienced through you. And you are a unique experience. Like, why would universe want to replicate the same experience if it wants to experience itself? Your soul wants to be expressed. Bring it on. Like, what is in you that wants to come out? Oh my God. And I'm like getting fired up about thinking about it because ever since I started this journey, I'm just like, everybody who seeks out love, peace, higher frequencies, it's all within you. It's never been outside of you. It's never been about that. It's all been lies. Humans are just like a speck in this timeline of existence. Everything that we know now is only the truth in this moment. back in medieval times, that was the truth in that moment, and they did things way differently. So, what is the truth that we want now in this moment? Because this is where all the manifestation happens. This is where we make change. This is where we heal our past. This is where we take actions into our future. Hypnosis is the use of the hypnotic state to create change based on an intention. Where does the quantum come into play? Like, what does that even mean? I lose people, their eyes like roll in the back of their head, and they're like, what is she talking about? Let's go back to Dolores Cannon. She created this modality. She started off as a hypnotherapist. What hypnotherapists use will be the alpha, gamma, beta states, concentration or meditation or creative flow. She asked her clients, like, let's try this. And they were open to it. And cancer patients would have to come to her, which is very challenging. Yeah. They would receive whatever they needed to treat their cancer at the time. And she started hypnotherapy in the 60s, and she ended up passing away like back in 2010, 2011, 2012. And then the other story that's really crazy is that when she decided to explore in these states, that this person started speaking through a famous character named Nostradamus. They had conversations, and then there came a point where he was like, "I'm not dead." Like, it was he was speaking to Nostradamus in real time.
Our episode, which is airing right before this one will drop, we were talking about quantum physics.
Mhm.
So it sounds like what you're getting at is time folding in on itself. They're talking, but it's because he was connecting to someone who was in the future who was reaching back to him. And so it's all kind of in the present moment how you're getting that information because you're just tapping into whatever the energetic
Yeah.
fabric is.
Yeah. Isn't that insane? The fun part about it is that he was like, "You guys got all the translations wrong for my predictions." So they worked together for some time. And then he got upset when he found out that she was a woman. How could she have knowledge of all these works and all these things and leading, like helping him work through this? Back to quantum, she actually started with past life regression because of the quantum physics element and time folding on each other, and everything exists at once, and you can tap into anything in any plane of existence. She named it quantum because it just made more sense with her work. The mind only uses the past experiences, events, even our past lives, if you want to get into that, past lives, quote unquote, whatever that means now that we're in the quantum realm. And that's why we never move forward unless we intentionally take different and new actions. When you pare down what your goals are into smaller action steps, you realize that this moment when I needed to take a nap was beneficial for me to becoming that leader or the person that does head a podcast or that person who wants to step into a bigger role at work. That nap was essential for that moment. But as society had programmed us, it would have told us not to take a nap because we were being lazy. What I do in life coaching, even in my quantum hypnosis work, everything's in the body, in my breath work, all that stuff. So,
Clearly you're tapping into something which is so great, like following that inspiration. I know that's part of what we've been trying to do through this podcast and just independently. You bring up such a good point that a lot of how our minds are operating and our perceptions and our habits, the narratives that we carry, are a result of centuries of reinforcement. Things that have been passed down, that are written in the textbooks, that are modeled in behaviors, that are in media. On that note, I was hoping you could outline some of the common misconceptions around specifically hypnosis, because I imagine, like with intuition, astrology, etc., this type of modality, there are a lot of stereotypes and assumptions made.
I love the story that you gave because I'll riff off that. Hypnotists, they can't make you do things that you don't want to do. It's very free will based. If you are not open to being hypnotized, as you both were in my work, I would never be able to hypnotize you guys. Also, as a life coach, I think based on societal standards, people think you have everything together or you should have everything together. And I'm very open and honest about my journey unfolding, especially when I opened up Substack. I like share my experiences, like transitioning, because this transition period is surprisingly turning out to be longer than I thought I would be, like from nursing to my own work. I was sharing like how I started going into financial issues, and this man who stranger online, he messaged back and was very upset about the whole piece that I wrote. Life coaching is how are we approaching life differently in the energy we want to step into, and letting go of the expectation and attachment of what life is supposed to look like. I think about this all the time, especially with hypnotists. Sometimes they're hypnotizing people based on their background, their ethics, and what they believe. Everybody's different. What if you're hypnotizing someone out of the way they're supposed to be
Mm.
instead of like, oh, this is like, oh, we want to do this. This will be better for me. But what if they were supposed to be that way?
That's like so
And
profound. I love that. You're mentioning free will, which we talk about all the time. Like just because something comes up in a psychic reading, we always have the caveat of this is a suggestion. This is just information that's coming through. Do with it what you will. You are
mhm,
in the driver's seat of your life, so you decide
yes,
where to
yes,
take it. And to think of the ripple effect, it's like the butterfly effect, where if you had a hypnotist who was working with someone, hypnotizing them, like one of the more common examples is so that they don't keep smoking or something.
yeah,
And okay, we can separate that out and say, well, you probably shouldn't be smoking, yada yada. But what if it was part of their journey to have like a certain experience happen so that they
yes.
could teach other people or help other people, and it was related to that, like it was a conversation that they had when they were out in a smoke break or something. And so maybe they
Well,
needed to be smoking for like 2 weeks longer than they were. So who knows?
yes, yeah. I'm very much about the soul path and the soul expression. And if we didn't experience darkness in our lives, how would we know what we want that is light? Some people take certain journeys in our lives to help teach us a lesson in their darkness.
Reminder to submit your Synergy to Synastry reviews on Apple Podcasts and in the comment section of Spotify so that you can enter our summer solstice review raffle.
Get your entry in ASAP for a 60-minute reading with us because the winner will be announced on June 20th.
Last year, I had the privilege of contributing to a multi-author book from Divine Flow Publishing, and it was just released a couple weeks ago. It's called Soul Rising: Guidance for Navigating Your Spiritual Awakening. To get your copy, head over to my website, readbyreneetoday.com, for details.
Yay, Renee! I can't wait to read it. And listeners, as I've mentioned over and over again, I've been working on adding modalities to my repertoire: human design, astrology, and dream analysis. Head over to my Substack, channeled by Christine with one L, to stay up to date on when those readings will go live and to potentially help me refine my offering. I actually wouldn't want to go to a practitioner who hasn't experienced some life. If that, like, I don't even enjoy
Mhm.
having relationships with other people who haven't experienced life or have no desire to experience life.
And when you're saying experience life, you mean having gone through a series of ups and downs or made fundamental changes?
Experience something difficult in their life and they learned how to overcome it, or traveled the world and lived in a different culture. Just something where like you got out of your box and you saw there was something else out there. That's important for me when I look for practitioners in general. So I think for those people who expect a life coach to quote unquote have their life together, the mentors I have in my life, like what I love about them is that they have gone through difficult experiences. So when I go through that experience, I can go to them and say, hey, did you experience this when you had a tough time in life? Because I don't know if this is normal or not. Let's learn from people who have been subject to the human condition and figured out a way through it, because that's more likely to resonate than somebody who's just quote unquote living the way we should be.
Also, I think there's a slight risk factor where if there's somebody who comes across as super, super polished, then you might have in the back of your head, they're performing in some capacity. I was just talking to someone about this the other day. If you're a traditional therapist, and obviously there's different lines of talk therapy, but different teachings for that there's almost like this like invisible line between you and the client. There's an expectation that you're not just going to necessarily share everything about your life story. And we are in positions where, of course, there's ethics and there's a filter and you're there and you're supposed to help that person in front of you. But we actually don't have as firm of a boundary in front of us, and we can share more of ourselves. And also, if we're doing intuitive work, we're literally sharing energy with the person in front of us. So I think that's another piece to consider too. It almost, I think, would set a little antenna off for people. Like, are they really being fully genuine and authentic if they just come across like they have it too together in a way?
You reminded me of this analogy that I've used my whole life. Growing up, I was a cheerleader. I was an all-star cheerleader, which I need to clarify because I was very athletic. Think like, Cheer on Netflix.
Oh my God.
But the
All-star.
one thing that was the one thing that was so important then that I carry with me like to this day is I was a flyer or a top girl. And one of the most important things you could learn was how to fall. Everywhere I go, whether that's working in finance or being at the gym, when I am lifting too much weight, how do I put it down so I don't hurt myself or anyone else? We're humans. We're going to make mistakes. We know humans make mistakes. How do we fall? How do we fall so that we can learn from our mistakes, but also so we don't hurt ourselves gravely? We just hurt ourselves enough to learn from the mistake.
Let's just be fucking human. Come on, you guys. I just want to be fucking human. I want to show up to this meeting in my pajamas. Like, let me be comfortable. Like, I
Yes.
don't care.
In being your authentic self, do you have any tips for someone who's interested in receiving specifically a quantum hypnosis session for how they can actually let go and surrender? In the format, there's the induction, so the meditation piece, and then there's the several hours where you're guided. You're sitting or you're laying down and you have your eyes closed, presumably in a comfortable position in a quiet room, and then you have like meditation music.
I do a 3-hour quantum hypnosis session just because the induction is really long and we want to explore. Actually, the process starts from the pre-session. Like when I prepare people, I'm getting them ready for what the experience looks like, how I will communicate with you in this space. There's no risk involved. Traditional QHHT is actually 5 hours long. TBH. Yeah. The in-person sessions. People would have to travel to a QHHT practitioner. And some people will still not get in there. And they paid like upwards of $500. I was inspired by the fact that people were not getting the result that they want, that I would take the time to prepare them in this way. When I learned quantum hypnosis, I didn't learn from Dolores Cannon's original work called Quantum Hypnosis Healing Therapy. QHHT is the original. It branched off to BQH, Beyond Quantum Hypnosis, which just basically means doing QHHT online. I get a lot of people who are like, "You do it online? Fishy," or whatever they're thinking. I do set up the space, call in our guides, we set our intentions together, and then I go through a whole chakra meditation. And then we go through portals and hoops and whatever I end up coming up with that day. This process takes like about 30 minutes. But I also give out a guide before I work with a client. Like, here's a list of things on how to set up your space. It helps with the anxiety. If you're anxious, you're in a higher brain wave state. We are trying to get you to the deepest one. And if anybody's ever like fearful of the theta brainwave state, everybody's going in and out of the theta brainwave state every day. Soon as you wake up, you're still in theta. When you're getting ready for bed, you're entering theta. If you've never meditated, if you tend to be an anxious person, maybe quantum hypnosis for later. I want to respect your time. So what the question would be, how do we remedy the anxiety? I do open up the floor for anybody who knows themselves very well. They can use plant medicine, and I've had a couple of people use microdose and use marijuana. I always say just a little bit because we're getting in there. You're not in a conscious state anymore. We're in the subconscious state. Whatever gets your brain into a state of flow, like monotonous activities that you do throughout the day that gets you in that peaceful state.
Like a shower, washing dishes, driving a car.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What you brought up about the meditation piece, we'll deep dive more when we go on your podcast, but something that we talked about in my session, the fact that as an intuitive, I have meditated, many a time, so I'm familiar with it. I know what it feels like to really go deep in a meditative state or like black out basically, and then you just kind of come to and you're like, "Whoa." What was so interesting as someone who's intuitive, who has read psychically so many people at this point, that what it felt like sensation wise, if this helps put people into the experience, is it felt like I was providing a psychic reading. I could tell what I was saying out loud. I would say it. And then Christian wasn't following what I was saying. And so I was explaining it to her because I'm like, oh, I know what it means. And that's because that's how readings work. It's in the words that they're going to understand. I was saying it out loud in words that I would understand. So I knew exactly what I was talking about and what the symbolism meant, because it was like I was providing a reading for myself. I just happened to be saying it to you.
Doing quantum hypnosis for psychics has been so much fun. Like, you guys aren't the first ones, but it just continues to be more fun. You're basically channeling yourself. In one of my hypnosis sessions, I met one of my, is he a galactic guide? I don't know what kind of alien he is. And he took me into a portal room and he said, this space of imagination is the same as the psychic space, it's the same as the realm of creativity. It's all the same place.
Listeners out there, you're probably here because you're interested in this stuff for a reason. Just know that when you go into your flow state, like, you're tapping into the same intuition Christian's talking about, the same intuition Renee and I tap into when we're looking for messages. We're all capable of accessing it.
And it's really funny because our minds, our brains, back to the brain, when we think of like mystical modalities, quantum hypnosis, and then we realize that it's like ordinary, everyday things that we do that we can tap into these states. You're just like, what
Totally.
the hell? And that's where life coaching comes in. Like, what are you going to do about everything we learned in this session? I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to journal. It's always simple answers like that to create a better future. It's not flashy or glamorous. In fact, it's very affordable if you think about it.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, go for it.
We talked about human design, or we've been sprinkling it in this conversation. Curious if you have any stats on people with a defined mind or a defined head, whether or not they're easier to hypnotize or not. And from what I understand, those with a defined mind or head is like 30% of the population. It's actually more common to have an open mind or an open head. I'm just curious if you know have of any
I
crossover
have
between those.
no idea. I don't collect people's birth data for quantum hypnosis sessions. I usually open up the floor like, hey, if you want to share your birth data, I can look at your astrology and your human design and it will help me guide you through this process together. But otherwise, I don't ask for birth data, so I do not have that set. Sorry.
No, it's the scientist in me. It's the one in my profile that wants to know all the
But it's
nitty-gritty details.
curious, right? And I would only get that stat from people who are willing to share the information, so would it be even accurate?
That is true. And I would be
Mm.
willing to share, but I have a defined mind and a defined
Mhm.
head. Maybe we can collab on like a special sort of session for clients and start to collect data because I'm nerdy like that.
Ah,
And by
yes.
we, I mean I will collect the data and analyze it and then just share it with you. I'm wondering for those people who rely on their sacral responses in human design, if they're less likely to visualize and if for them, like the feeling is more important than what they're quote unquote seeing in their third eye.
I have that.
Oh,
No.
but you
Yeah,
can visualize.
that's what I'm saying. So I feel like, I mean, it's a sample size of one, but I also have an undefined head. You'd need to collect more data to support the theory, but I'm immediately defying the theory.
We have one.
Yeah.
We have one.
Just to kind of follow up, we wanted to pose this question to you. Part of how we even were interested in talking about hypnosis, we had a season 1 listener question, and it was, do you think there's a connection between consciously choosing to listen to your intuition and self-hypnosis? So Christine and I at the time took a pass at the question. I think we were drawing a comparison to just meditation.
Mhm.
We don't know like all that much about hypnosis. We were literally looking up, we're like, okay, so what are people considering self-hypnosis versus just regular hypnosis? And so it seemed like it could just be like a really enhanced like visualization practice that you are helping yourself to work through something.
For hypnosis, we are rewiring neural pathways to create change. So if you're doing that with your intuition, you're doing the same thing.
Mm.
But sometimes listening to your intuition is like, oh, there's a message here for me, or take this direction, et cetera, et cetera. So they might not necessarily be the same. It depends on what you're doing with the intuition. I feel like self hypnosis is intuitive too, because you're like guiding yourself into what you want to do in this state where you can create change with your neural pathways. The visualization piece, you do not need to visualize to be hypnotized. What is visualization? Daydreaming. Everybody's daydreamed. There's a lot of people who don't visualize. What are they feeling in this space instead of what are they seeing in this space? What's coming up in their mind about this feeling? Guide the questions that way.
Ultimately, what it's indicating is if somebody is dominant in clairsentience and claircognizance rather than clairvoyance.
Yeah, basically. So you can still rewire the brain that way too. The brain doesn't know the difference between what's reality and what's not, whatever that even means. They can see something in their mind and it will be programmed as real. They can watch something on TV and be programmed as real. They can feel a sensation in their body and be programmed as real. What I love to say is, you've been feeling shitty this whole time. What do you want to feel instead?
Definitely Christine and I, we're like a combination of that. Where
Mhm.
we operate in, okay, these are the facts, but then we've had to train ourselves in so many ways out of that and just start trusting the process, the universe, how things are, spirit team, people, ourselves in a different way. And so that's part of the journey that we've both been on over the last almost handful of years at this point. But it's like that conditioning, or that innately how we are. Think in the rational, think in planning, perfectionism, yada, yada. It's mindfulness. How do you catch that? How do you stop it? How do you quiet it? How do you challenge it, mitigate it?
Yeah. I do a lot of physical activity just to bring myself back to my body, because we even touched on it in this episode. Like, the mind is just like a decision-making mechanism. Everything else is in the body. Anyway, what I really want to know, I'll be honest, is like the coolest stories you have from what you've done. Like, Dolores Cannon channeled Nostradamus. Like, what are your big Nostradamus sessions? Surprise! We had such an in-depth discussion with Christian that we just had to keep it all and split this interview into a two-parter.
That's right. Tune in next week for Christian's answer to Christine's question. What's the coolest experience you've had during a quantum hypnosis session?
Plus, we get to our dream analysis segment, channeled messages, and of course, the bloopers.
If you're already loving Christian's perspective and want to get in touch, head over to our show notes where we've included her socials.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more, the resources we used to prepare for this episode are listed in the show notes.
If you're curious to develop your intuition, we've partnered with the Nirvana Be Light program to give our listeners a $500 discount on tuition fees. Email us for more details and we'll connect you with the founder, Deganit Noor.
Want to connect with us? You can reach me, Christine, at Channeled by Christine with one L on Instagram.
And you can reach me, Renee, at _read by Renee, or connect with us both via email at synergytosynastry@gmail.com.
Keep your spirit curious and your aura sparkling.
We'll see you when the stars next align.